Hi, I was humiliated in a billionaire's mansion. But what happened next changed everything. Stick around till the end. You won't believe the twist. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more shocking true stories. My name is Julian, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting in a billionaire's palatial dining hall, being ridiculed in front of the elite, I would have laughed in your face. Yet there I was, 25 years old, wearing my one decent suit, when Serafina's father looked straight at me with eyes as cold as steel. Street trash, Elias Thorne sneered, loud enough for every polished guest to hear. Street garbage, wearing a borrowed suit. The room went silent. Champagne glasses froze midair. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, but instead of crumbling, something inside me sparked. How did I even end up at that table? Months earlier, life was simple, though not easy. I worked part-time as a librarian at the Oakland Public Library, scraping by while pursuing my computer science degree in evening classes. Money was tight. Some nights I had to pick between buying textbooks or paying the power bill. Every morning, like clockwork, she appeared. Serafina. She always ordered the same thing at the cafe next to the library. Black coffee, 1 sugar. While most high-powered professionals rushed in without a glance, she always looked people in the eye, said please and thank you, and left tips that showed genuine kindness. Her green eyes were warm, her smile unhurried. She wasn't like the others. One morning, unable to resist, I teased, "You must be addicted to our coffee." She grinned. "It's good coffee, but honestly, it's the service I like." That was the first spark. As days turned into weeks, she lingered longer, asking me questions no one else cared about. Where I came from, what my dreams were. I told her about my childhood in rural Idaho, raised by a single father who worked himself to exhaustion just to keep food on the table. She listened with respect, not pity. "That's real strength," she said softly one day. "Most people I know had everything handed to them, including me." That was my first clue she wasn't just another college grad or office worker. Her elegance wasn't loud, but it was there. In her simple but expensive watch, her quiet confidence, her car that cost more than I'd earn in a year. Eventually, she asked me out. Our first date was a little Italian spot, not over the top, but nicer than anywhere I'd dared to take myself before. We talked until closing time. She told me she worked in investments at her family's company, Thorne Industries. I didn't think much of it then. Later that night, curiosity got the best of me. I Googled Thorne Industries. My jaw dropped. Serafina wasn't just from money. She was the daughter of Elias Thorne, one of the wealthiest and most ruthless tycoons in the country. A man whose face was plastered across magazines as the definition of power. I almost canceled everything right then. But by then, it was too late. I'd already fallen for her. Second date, convinced we lived in completely different worlds. But Serafina called the next day, her voice warm and sincere, as she told me how much she had enjoyed our evening together. Against my better judgment, I agreed to see her again. Over the next 6 months, our relationship deepened. Serafina never made me feel less than her because of my background. She was just as happy eating at my favorite diner as she was taking me to upscale restaurants. She showed genuine interest in my coding projects, even offering to connect me with the marketing department at her company. "You have real talent, Julian," she would say, looking over my portfolio. "Any company would be lucky to have you." When she first told me she loved me, we were walking along Lake Merritt at sunset. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts, just a simple, heartfelt declaration as we watched the fading light reflect off the water. I realized then that I loved her too, not because of her family name or wealth, but because of her kindness, her integrity, and the way she made me feel valued. Of course, there were moments that highlighted our different backgrounds, like when she casually mentioned skiing in the Alps as a child, or when she did not understand why I was so excited about a $100 bonus at work. But Serafina always listened, and learned. She never made me feel ashamed of where I came from or who I was. For 6 beautiful months, we existed in our own bubble, largely separate from her family and the world of extreme wealth she came from. We built our relationship on shared values and genuine connection. I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, our different worlds would not matter in the end. I had no idea how wrong I was or how cruelly reality would shatter that illusion on the night I finally met her family. The invitation came on a rainy Tuesday evening in April. Serafina and I were cuddled on my worn sofa in my tiny apartment sharing takeout and watching an old movie when she suddenly paused the screen. "My grandparents are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary next month," she said, her fingers lightly tracing patterns on my arm. "There is going to be a formal dinner at the family estate. I would really like you to come with me." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "Your family estate? You mean meet your entire family?" Serafina nodded, her expression a mix of hopefulness and something else. Anxiety, perhaps. "It is a big deal, I know, but we have been together for 6 months, and you are important to me. I want them to meet you." "Will there be many people there?" I asked, already feeling my stomach tighten with apprehension. "About 100 guests, mostly family, some close friends of my grandparents, a few business associates." She squeezed my hand. "I know it sounds intimidating, but they will love you, Julian. How could they not?" Her confidence was touching, but did little to calm my nerves. For the next 2 weeks, I obsessed over every detail. What would I wear? How should I speak? What if I used the wrong fork or said something embarrassing? My best friend David listened patiently to my concerns over coffee the following Sunday. "You need a killer suit," he declared. "Something that makes you feel confident." We spent the entire afternoon combing through department stores, but everything suitable for such an event was far beyond my budget. $500 for a suit I would wear once seemed insane when that amount represented half my rent. Seeing my dismay, David offered a solution. "I still have that midnight blue silk tuxedo from my cousin's wedding last year. It would fit you perfectly with a few minor adjustments." "I cannot borrow your suit," I protested weakly, though relief was already washing over me. "Of course you can, and my pearl cufflinks too. You will look stunning." The week before the dinner, I practiced walking in dress shoes around my apartment. I watched YouTube videos on formal dining etiquette, memorizing which utensil to use for each course. I researched the Thorne family history so I could make intelligent conversation about their business interests. The night before the event, my dad called. He had always been my rock, the one who helped raise me after my mother left. "Just remember who you are," he said firmly. "You are smart, kind, and worthy of respect, regardless of how much money anyone has. Do not let anyone make you feel small." I clung to his words as I prepared the next evening, taking extra care with my hair and my tie. The borrowed suit fit beautifully, the dark blue material elegant and classic. David's pearl cufflinks added a touch of classic sophistication. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. When Serafina arrived to pick me up, her expression made all the anxiety worth it. "You look absolutely breathtaking," she whispered, kissing me softly. Her car, usually modest by her standards, had been replaced with a sleek black luxury sedan driven by a chauffeur. As we settled into the plush leather seats, Serafina sensed my nervousness. "They are just people, Julian," she said, taking my hand. "Wealthy people, yes, but still just people with their own insecurities and flaws. Just be your wonderful self." The drive took us through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until we turned onto a private road lined with ancient oak trees. As the Thorne estate came into view, my mouth went dry. It was not just a house, but a mansion that looked like it belonged in a period drama, complete with manicured gardens and a circular driveway where valets waited to park arriving vehicles. "You grew up here," I whispered, unable to hide my awe. Serafina nodded, a slightly embarrassed smile on her face. Home. Sweet home. Ready? As the car stopped at the entrance, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of my dad's words. I was worthy of respect. I belonged here. But as we stepped out and the enormous double doors opened to reveal the opulence within, I could not shake the feeling that I was walking into the lion's den. The Thorne Mansion's grand foyer took my breath away. A crystal chandelier larger than my entire apartment hung from a ceiling painted with Renaissance-style clouds and cherubs. Marble floors gleamed beneath our feet, and a sweeping staircase curved majestically to the upper floors. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Impeccably dressed staff moved silently among the arriving guests, collecting coats and offering flutes of champagne on silver trays. I accepted one gratefully, needing something to calm my nerves and occupy my hands. Serafina Darling, a tall, elegant man in his 50s, approached us, his silver blonde hair swept into a perfect coif. He air-kissed both her cheeks before turning his cool blue eyes to me. "And you must be Julian." "Father, this is Julian Miller," Serafina said, her hand reassuring on the small of my back. "Julian, my father, Elias Thorne." I extended my hand. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thorne. Thank you for including me in this special celebration." His handshake was brief and formal. "Of course, Serafina has mentioned you." The slight emphasis on mentioned made it clear I had been a topic of limited discussion. "What a lovely suit. Such an interesting color choice for a spring event." Before I could respond to what was clearly a subtle critique, a younger man bounded up to us, his warm smile a stark contrast to his father's restrained greeting. "Finally, I have been dying to meet the man who got my sister to stop bringing those insufferable socialites to family events." He hugged me without hesitation. "I am Thomas, the cooler Thorne sibling." Serafina laughed. "My brother lacks my father's gift for subtlety." Thomas linked his arm through mine. "Come on, I will introduce you to people who actually know how to smile. Most of them anyway." As we moved through the crowd, I became acutely aware of the appraising glances. Thomas introduced me to cousins, family friends, and business associates, most of whom were polite, if somewhat reserved. The questions began innocuously enough. "And what do you do, Julian?" asked an older man, dripping in diamonds. "I work at a public library while finishing my degree in computer science," I answered honestly. "How quaint," he replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "A librarian. How did you and Serafina meet?" Each time I explained our coffee shop meeting, I watched the subtle shifts in expression, raised eyebrows, exchanged glances, thin smiles. The unspoken judgment was palpable. "Oh, I just love those rags to riches stories," gushed one woman, as if I were a character from a Dickens novel rather than a person standing right in front of her. "Serafina always did have a charitable heart," murmured another, just loudly enough for me to hear. Thomas squeezed my arm supportively. "Ignore them. They are just jealous because you have actual personality and do not bleed blue." We eventually made our way to Serafina's grandparents, the guests of honor. I had expected more of the same thinly veiled condescension, but Eleanor and Henry Thorne surprised me with their warmth. "So, you are the young man who has put such a genuine smile on our granddaughter's face," Henry said, clasping my hand between both of his. "Wonderful to meet you, my dear." "Serafina tells us you are studying computer science," Eleanor added. "I would love to hear about your projects sometime." Their kindness was a momentary respite from the scrutiny, but as we moved away, Thomas leaned in to whisper, "Grandpa and Grandma are the best of the bunch. They came from nothing and built the company themselves. The rest of us just got lucky in the genetic lottery." As the evening progressed, I managed a few pleasant conversations. A young cousin of Serafina's who was studying art history, an elderly aunt who had traveled extensively and loved hearing about my small hometown, a business partner of the family who seemed genuinely interested in my plans. But for every friendly interaction, there were 3 or 4 that left me feeling examined and found wanting. Comments about my accent, subtle digs about my education, questions that probed at my family background as if searching for something scandalous. Through it all, Serafina remained attentive, her hand rarely leaving mine, stepping in when conversations became too pointed, but even she could not shield me from the moment I had been dreading most. "There is my father," Serafina said quietly, nodding toward a distinguished-looking man holding court across the room. Elias Thorne was tall and imposing with steel-gray hair and Serafina's green eyes, though his held none of her warmth. "Should we go say hello?" I asked, though every instinct told me to avoid this man. Serafina hesitated. "We should. He can be abrupt. Do not take anything personally." We approached Elias as he finished a conversation about stock prices. He turned to us, his gaze sweeping over me in a quick assessment before returning to his daughter. "Serafina, father, this is Julian Miller. Julian, my father, Elias Thorne." I extended my hand. "It is an honor to meet you, Mr. Thorne." He took my hand briefly, his grip firm to the point of discomfort. Indeed. That was all. No pleasantries, no welcome, just a single word that somehow managed to convey both dismissal and disapproval. A staff member announced dinner would be served, saving us from the awkward silence that followed. As Serafina guided me toward the dining room, I caught Elias watching us. His expression unreadable but unmistakably cold. "That went better than I expected," Serafina whispered, but the tension in her voice belied her words. The warning bells in my mind grew louder as we entered the ornate dining room. Something told me the worst was yet to come. The dining room was a testament to old money and refined taste. A massive mahogany table stretched beneath another sparkling chandelier, set with gleaming silver, fine china, and crystal glasses that caught the light. Fresh flower arrangements and candles created an atmosphere of elegance and intimacy despite the room's grand scale. A staff member directed each guest to their assigned seat. My heart sank when I realized I had been placed directly across from Elias Thorne with Serafina to my right. Thomas caught my eye from further down the table and gave me an encouraging thumbs up when no one was looking. "Quite the production, is it not?" Serafina whispered as she held my chair. "Just remember there are only 5 courses and different forks." When I looked at her in horror, she laughed. "Kidding. It is just a normal dinner with extremely expensive wine." As the first course was served, a delicate soup I did not recognize, I carefully watched others to make sure I used the correct spoon. The conversation around the table focused on topics that seemed designed to exclude outsiders. Stock portfolios, boarding schools, vacation homes in countries I had only seen on maps. I remained silent, concentrating on not making any social blunders, while taking tiny sips of wine to calm my nerves. Serafina occasionally tried to include me, explaining inside references or asking for my opinion, but each attempt only highlighted my outsider status. "So, Mr. Miller?" Elias's voice suddenly cut through the conversation, addressing me directly for the first time. "Serafina tells me you work at a library." The table quieted, attention shifting to our exchange. I set down my spoon carefully. "Yes, sir. It helps pay for my education." "And what exactly are you studying?" His tone suggested he doubted it was anything worthwhile. "Computer science. I will graduate next spring." He raised an eyebrow. "Computer science? Pushing buttons and such?" "Actually, Father," Serafina interjected, "Julian is extremely talented. His work focuses on brand identity and digital marketing solutions." Elias ignored her. "And where did you say you were from originally?" "A small town in Idaho, Millfield." "Never heard of it." He took a sip of wine. "What does your father do?" The question was a landmine, and from Elias's expression, he knew it. Serafina tensed beside me. "My mother left when I was young," I answered evenly. "My father raised my sister and me on his own." "And what does he do? Your father?" "He works in retail now. Before that, he cleaned houses and waited tables, whatever it took to support us." A few seats away, I heard Eleanor Thorne murmur approvingly. A strong man. Elias's mouth twitched downward. Indeed, from service work to service work through the generations. Fascinating. Serafina set down her fork with more force than necessary. Julian's father made incredible sacrifices to give his children opportunities. He should be admired, not condescended to. The second course arrived, temporarily halting the interrogation. Serafina squeezed my hand under the table, her silent support the only thing keeping me from fleeing the room. As dinner progressed through multiple courses of increasingly elaborate food, Elias continued to direct pointed questions my way between conversations with other guests. Did you attend university immediately after high school? Or did you discover your intellectual curiosity later in life? That is an interesting accent. Is that common where you come from? Have you ever been to Europe? No, a pity. Travel is so educational for those with limited exposure to culture. Each question was phrased to seem innocent while carrying a clear message. You do not belong here. By the time the main course arrived, an exquisitely prepared beef tenderloin, my nerves were frayed. I reached for my wine glass, misjudging the distance in my anxiety, and knocked it slightly. A few drops of red wine splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth. I am so sorry, I gasped, mortified, as a server rushed over with a clean napkin. No harm done, Serafina assured me. But her father's cold chuckle drew everyone's attention. Careful with that, Elias said loudly. That wine costs more than you probably make in a week. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Serafina's face flushed with anger. Father, that is enough. Elias leaned back in his chair, swirling his own wine. I am merely stating facts, daughter. No need to be sensitive. His gaze shifted back to me, now all pretense of civility abandoned. Now tell me, Mr. Miller, is that suit from this season's collection? I do not recall seeing anything like it in my closet. The question was so blatantly designed to embarrass that several guests looked away in discomfort. I felt my cheeks burning, but kept my expression neutral. It belongs to a friend. He was kind enough to lend it to me for tonight. Ah, Elias nodded, his eyes glittering with malice. Borrowed finery. I thought as much. Serafina started to rise from her seat. Father, I will not sit here while you insult my guest. Elias waved a dismissive hand. Sit down, Serafina. If your friend is going to be part of this world, he should develop thicker skin. My skin is plenty thick, Mr. Thorne, I replied quietly. It had to be, growing up the way I did. Something in my calm response seemed to infuriate him. He set down his glass and leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that nonetheless carried throughout the now silent room. Let me be clear, Mr. Miller. My daughter may be temporarily amused by slumming it with you, but make no mistake, you are street garbage in a borrowed suit, and you will never belong in this family or this world. 100 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Elias's wife, Evelyn, stared at her plate. Thomas's mouth hung open in shock. Serafina was halfway out of her chair, rage contorting her features. My blood turned to ice. In that moment, everything slowed down. I saw Elias's cruel eyes locked with mine, savoring my public humiliation. I felt the weight of every guest's attention, witnessing what Elias assumed would be my destruction. But something unexpected happened inside me. A lifetime of being underestimated, of fighting harder for everything I had, of proving people wrong rose up like a wave. A strange calm washed over me. I rose slowly from my seat, my heart pounding, a smile forming on my lips. What happened next would change everything. I stood tall, smoothing the borrowed blue silk of my suit jacket. The room remained frozen in shocked silence, all eyes on me. Elias's expression was one of smug satisfaction, clearly expecting me to run from the room in tears. Instead, I picked up my water glass and took a small, deliberate sip before setting it down carefully. Street garbage, I repeated the words slowly, my voice steady and clear in the silent room. What an interesting choice of words, Mr. Thorne. I want to thank you, actually. I have been struggling with a moral dilemma for months, and you just made my decision remarkably easy. Elias's smug expression faltered slightly. What are you babbling about? Serafina believes I work only at a library. That is partly true. I do work there mornings, but for the past 2 years, I have also been working as a part-time investigative journalist for the San Francisco Chronicle. A ripple of whispers circled the table. Elias's face remained impassive, but I noticed his knuckles whitening around his fork. 6 months ago, before I met your daughter, I was part of a team investigating corporate fraud in the tech industry. During that investigation, a name kept appearing in our documents. Your name, Mr. Thorne. Now the color drained from Elias's face. Beside me, Serafina had gone completely still. Our investigation uncovered evidence suggesting Thorne Industries has been systematically falsifying financial reports for its global operations. We found documentation of offshore accounts, manipulated revenue streams, and what appears to be a sophisticated system of shell companies to evade taxes in 3 countries. The silence in the room had transformed from shocked to stunned. Thomas's eyes were wide, darting between his father and me. Evelyn Thorne pressed a hand to her chest, while Henry's expression had darkened considerably. When I realized who Serafina was, I faced an ethical quandary. I immediately disclosed our relationship to my editor and removed myself from the investigation. I even convinced the paper to delay publication while we sought additional corroborating sources. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked with Elias's. I did that out of respect for Serafina, because I fell in love with her. I did not want her family's potential wrongdoing to taint what we had. But I never told her about the investigation because I did not want to put her in an impossible position. Serafina turned to me, her expression a complex mixture of shock, confusion, and something else I could not quite name. Julian, is this true? I nodded briefly, touching her hand. I am sorry I kept this from you. I was trying to protect both you and the integrity of the investigation. Turning back to Elias, whose face had now flushed an alarming red, I continued. The paper agreed to hold the story, not because we lacked evidence, but because I requested more time to ensure absolute accuracy. I wanted to be certain before potentially destroying the reputation of my girlfriend's family business. I straightened my shoulders. But you have just made something very clear to me, Mr. Thorne. You see, I have been carrying around photographs of you meeting with offshore bankers, documents with your signature authorizing the financial falsifications, recordings of your executive team discussing how to hide the money from regulators. A glass shattered somewhere down the table. Elias had pushed back his chair and was half standing. This is preposterous. You are making wild accusations with no basis. In fact, I will sue you and your tabloid for defamation. I smiled calmly. You are welcome to try. The Chronicle's lawyers have vetted every document, every photograph, every recording. The story was ready to run months ago. I was the one who asked them to wait. Why would they listen to a librarian? He spat. Because the evidence I personally gathered was the linchpin of the entire investigation, and because Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists tend to have some influence in their newsrooms. This was stretching the truth slightly. I had not won a Pulitzer, but my mentor at the paper had, and he had indeed advocated for my request to delay publication. You see, Mr. Thorne, I grew up with nothing, as you so eloquently pointed out. That taught me to work twice as hard to pursue education, however I could get it. I worked full-time while putting myself through journalism school before switching to computer science. I took the librarian job because it offered flexible hours, but I never stopped working as a journalist. I reached for my phone in my small clutch purse. So, I would like to thank you for removing any doubt about what I should do next. I typed a quick message while continuing to speak. That was a text to my editor informing him that I am formally removing my objection to publication. The Chronicle will run our investigation in tomorrow's edition and online at midnight tonight. I believe the headline mentions your name specifically." The room erupted in chaos. Elias lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "You little nothing. Do you have any idea who you are dealing with? I will destroy you." Serafina stood and stepped between us. "That is enough, Father. You will not speak to him that way." "You fool," Elias hissed at his daughter. "Can you not see what he has done? He used you to get close to this family." I shook my head. "No, Mr. Thorne. I fell in love with your daughter despite his connection to you, not because of it. When I realized who she was, I immediately disclosed the conflict of interest and removed myself from the story." "Serafina, surely you cannot believe this," Evelyn finally spoke, her voice tight with alarm. "This person over your own father?" Serafina looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Did you really not know who I was when we met?" "I had no idea," I said softly. "You were just the kind woman who always ordered black coffee with 1 sugar and actually looked me in the eye when saying, 'Thank you.'" She studied my face for a long moment, then turned to her father. "I have seen the financial reports, Father. I have questioned their accuracy for years and been told to mind my own department. I believe him." Elias's face turned purple. "You ungrateful girl. Everything I have built, everything you stand to inherit, and you side with this nobody?" "His name is Julian," Serafina said firmly. "And yes, I do." Several guests had begun making discreet exits, murmuring awkward apologies. Thomas had moved to stand near us, his expression a mixture of shock and what appeared to be reluctant admiration. "Well," he said, breaking the tension slightly, "this is certainly the most exciting anniversary dinner we have ever had." Henry Thorne, who had remained silent until now, slowly rose from his seat at the head of the table. "Elias, my office now." As Elias stormed out with his wife following close behind, I turned to Serafina. "I should go." "I will drive you," she said immediately. I shook my head. "No, you need to be with your family right now. This is going to be a difficult night for all of you, and I am the last person who should be here. Julian, please, we need to talk about this." "We will," I promised, "but not tonight. Call me tomorrow if you still want to." As I gathered my things, Eleanor Thorne approached. To my surprise, she took my hands in hers. "My dear, while I cannot say I am pleased about tomorrow's news, I must admit you showed remarkable courage tonight. No one has stood up to Elias like that in decades." I swallowed hard. "I am sorry this celebration was ruined." She smiled sadly. 50 years of marriage teaches you that truth, however unpleasant, is always preferable to comfortable lies." I left the mansion with my head held high, declining Serafina's repeated offers to accompany me. As the taxi drove me away from the estate, I watched the grand house recede in the rear window, wondering if I had just destroyed the first real love I had ever known. My phone buzzed with a message from my editor. "Got your text. Running the story at midnight. Are you okay?" I typed back, "Yes, it was the right decision." But as the taxi continued through the night, tears finally began to fall. Not because of Elias's cruelty or the public humiliation, but because in standing up for the truth, I might have lost the woman I loved. The following morning, the San Francisco Chronicle's headline read, "Thorne Industries Financial Fraud and Corruption Exposed." My byline appeared alongside 2 senior reporters. The story detailed years of systematic financial violations, falsified reports, and bribes to officials. It included damning photographs, excerpts from internal memos, and quotes from former employees who had agreed to speak anonymously. I had not slept. After returning to my apartment, I had spent hours on the phone with my editor and the paper's lawyers, going over every detail one final time before publication. When the story went live at midnight, I watched my phone, half expecting it to ring with Serafina's name on the screen. It never did. By 9 a.m., the story had been picked up by national news outlets. By noon, Thorne Industries stock had plummeted 25%. By evening, the SEC and Department of Justice had announced preliminary investigations. My phone rang constantly, but never with the one call I was waiting for. Colleagues congratulated me on the breakthrough story. My editor offered me a full-time position. Other news organizations reached out with job offers. Through it all, I felt hollow. "You did the right thing," my sister Sarah assured me when I finally answered her call. "That man was a monster. You stood up not just for yourself, but for everyone he has ever stepped on." "Then why does it feel so awful?" I asked, staring out my apartment window at the rainy street below. "Because you care about Serafina," she said simply, "and because doing the right thing often comes at a personal cost." 3 days after the story broke, with still no word from Serafina, I returned to work at the library. My manager had seen the news and greeted me with a mixture of awe and concern. "Are you sure you want to be here?" he asked. I nodded. For now, this was home. I was just reshelving a book when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Serafina. "I am here." I looked up and she was standing at the counter, wearing a simple pair of jeans and a sweater. No expensive jewelry, no fancy clothes, just her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was smiling. I walked over to her, my heart in my throat. "I need to talk to you," she whispered, her voice a little shaky. I was a complete wreck the past 3 days. I had to face my dad, the lawyers, the board, everything. But I want you to know something. Every single time I defended him, I felt sick. Every time I said I was on his side, I was lying. You were right about him, and I should have seen it sooner. I am so sorry. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I do. I should have stood up for you sooner. I should have told him to back off. I was so scared of losing you that I almost did. But I am here now," I said, "and so are you." She nodded, tears finally flowing freely. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Julian, the bravest, most honest person I know. And I do not care about the money. I do not care about the company. All I care about is you." I took her hands and held them tight. "I love you," I said. "I am sorry I put you through all of this." "No," she said, shaking her head. "I am glad you did. Now I know that what we have is real. It is not about money or power or connections. It is about us. And it is about the truth. And it is worth fighting for." I leaned down and kissed her, right there in the middle of the library, with my manager and customers watching. It was the most honest, raw kiss I had ever had. When we pulled away, she took my hand. "Come on," she said. "I want to go to that coffee shop next door with my boyfriend." We walked out of the library, hand in hand, a little bit broken, a little bit bruised, but ready to face the world together. The future was uncertain. Elias Thorne was facing a full-scale federal investigation, and Serafina's family was in turmoil. But for the first time in my life, I knew I was with someone who truly saw me for who I was, not for what I had or did not have. And that was more valuable than any inheritance, more powerful than any lie.